It's been a minute, hasn't it? The Suicide Squad is not DC's first film, as we are all very much aware of. The Suicide Squad isn't even DC's first Suicide Squad. DC has pumped out a dozen films in their desperate clamor to mimic a fraction of Marvel's power. But in comparison to all those other films, the Suicide Squad sounds different. And no, I don't mean the music or the sound design or the Foley. The sound profile I am talking about is the dialogue. Now, I know it's easy to cherry pick individual clips from films to try to prove a point, but I do think there is a pretty poignant illustration to be made. Take a look at this comedic scene from Aquaman.
Your stupid Atlantean GPS just told you to jump out of an airplane over the middle of the desert, and now we are stranded.
If you're the next true king, we're doomed.
Now let's take a look at this comedic scene from Wonder Woman.
What is a secretary?
Ooh, well, I do everything. I go where he tells me to go and I do what he tells me to do.
Oh, well, where I'm from, that's called slavery.
I really like her.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Ladies, after you.
I do. I like her.
Now let's take a look at this comedic scene from the Suicide Squad.
Yo, is this a dog?
What?
Is this thing a dog?
A dog?
Yes.
What kind of dog do you think it is, mate?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with all the breeds. I'm gonna go with Afghan Hound.
That still gets me. Okay, now obviously that scene is completely different from the first two scenes that we watched. And of course, that comes down to, in large part, acting, and that each of these films have different tones and styles. But in the same respect, it's hard to argue against the notion that the scene from the Suicide Squad felt so much more natural. The dialogue seemed like it could have been ripped straight from some goofballs on the street, and it's that natural feeling that gave so much fuel to the comedy and the characters. As artistic as creative writing is, there are a ton of unnatural guidelines and rules that many of our favorite fictions follow, guidelines that don't apply to real life. There are protagonists, conflicts, tensions, climaxes, and a dozen other guiding lights that keep a fiction from slamming into the rocks and smashing itself to bits. But that's just the big picture stuff. Dialogue has its own typical structure and guidelines too. Dialogue is a tool in service of the greater narrative. When characters speak, the words that they use are meant to better inform us about the story and why we should be invested in it. High-level dialogue is purposeful and efficient. Everything is said for a reason. When one character says a full statement, another character returns with their full statement. When one character interrupts, the other character immediately quiets down. Even pauses and breaths and beats are calculated. Every moment in and between dialogue is carefully picked to push forward the story and waste as little time as possible. And dialogue is used to create tone, the personality of a fiction. Sillier word choices will work towards a lighter tone.
Come on, pick it up! You son of a blob!
While quicker, biting dialogue will foster a tone of seriousness and tension.
You think we were gonna let you parade around in your ridiculous suits pretending you were running this company?
Sorry! My Prada's at the cleaners! Along with my hoodie and my fuck you flip-flops, you pretentious douchebag!
Characters use language that maybe you or I wouldn't on the spot in real life, but they do sound cool coming off the tongue. The words are powerful, or funny, or just what the moment needed. This is what is known in fiction as heightened language. It's everyday communication, but refined and effective. Real people lose their train of thought, stutter, or use words that don't really capture the essence of what they're trying to convey. Real communication is imperfect and inefficient. Heightened language in dialogue is as perfect as the writer can make it to be. This is why characters don't sneeze or cough during dialogue unless it's meant to serve the narrative.
This lady is very tired.
No, wait here.
And it's due to these typical structures and guidelines that dialogue, even across completely unrelated fictions, can feel generic. Not bad, just familiar and samey. I mean, just think about how similar sitcoms sound. Not necessarily the content, but the pace and the style of the dialogue. It's even more pronounced with modern superhero fictions. It's generally 2 to 5 characters quipping back and forth until one of them gains argumentative superiority by making either an emotional or intellectual appeal that spotlights their morals and pushes the main cast towards their next objective. That, or the entire dialogue branch is building towards a snappy one-liner.
No one asked you to look, Tony.
It's ridiculous.
I think you look great, Cap. As far as I'm concerned, that's America's ass.
That is America's ass.
As long as you have snarky, quick-witted characters, it's an easy, reliable formula to work from. And I think it's a product of all these structures and formulaic guidelines that the Suicide Squad sounds so different. There are times when the film uses dialogue to accomplish absolutely nothing. And those times are great.
Who's Milton?
What?
I don't remember any Milton.
Fuck! He has been with us the whole time!
Somebody named Milton has been with us the whole time.
Yes!
It's a complete breakaway from everything that we have come to expect from how fictions are supposed to use dialogue, and it creates this really fresh, raw, natural feeling for the movie.
You didn't tell me you had a fear for rats, Dubois.
I'm an assassin! Why would I share my liabilities?
A while ago, a favorite channel of mine called Nerdstalgic released a video on the different styles of dialogue, and the one that he closed out the video on was naturalistic dialogue. To define this term, it is dialogue that sounds taken directly from real life. It sounds natural. And I recognize this may sound weird to some people because the widespread assumption is that all dialogue should be natural and realistic and believable. But that's actually not true, because as crazy as it sounds, natural dialogue, realistic dialogue, and believable dialogue are all different. I don't want to get too far into the weeds in this, so let's keep it simple. Believable dialogue, or the believability of dialogue, is hands down the most important factor of writing dialogue. Believable dialogue has nothing to do with realism or being natural. Believable dialogue is word usage that fits the context and tone of the fiction in such a way that we consumers don't even question it. A great example of this is the dialogue of Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Are you cussing with me?
No, you cussing with me?
Don't cuss and point
You're
at
gonna
me.
cuss with somebody, you're not gonna cuss with me, you little cuss.
Me.
The dialogue, the actual words being used, aren't realistic at all. But for the tone and context of the fiction, we gleefully accept this exchange as par for the course. In this way, tone and dialogue feed into each other. They are synergistic, they give each other power. The better the dialogue matches the tone, the stronger the tone becomes. And the stronger the tone, the more easily we can accept dialogue. The same thing happens here in Silicon Valley.
Unless Ehrlich jerks off 4 guys at a time, and then we can cut that in half.
How would he do 4 guys? He's got 2 hands, so that's 2 dicks at a time, right?
Look, you have 2 guys on either side with their dicks tip to tip, so you're going full length.
The conversation is wildly over the top and ridiculous, but the show has cemented a tone where this is believable. We don't question this dick-jerking dialogue, in fact, we welcome it. Overall, believable dialogue is about consistency. That's why Sorkin and Tarantino can write in ways that don't necessarily mirror real language. They write in heightened language. Their fictions are built on the unique tone that their dialogue creates, and they stick with it. Now, to consider realistic dialogue, we can actually look to the Suicide Squad, specifically Bloodsport and his daughter.
I can't believe you don't care that I stole only then I got caught.
I don't only care that you got caught. I care that you got caught for stealing something as stupid as a fucking TV watch!
It does other things too!
Now, this dialogue is realistic and believable. It's believable because we don't question it, and it's realistic because the words being used to convey the emotions and intents of the characters make sense as everyday language for people. They aren't speaking to inform an audience, they are speaking to communicate with each other. And just so you can appreciate realistic, believable dialogue, here is dialogue that is neither realistic nor believable.
This is Katana. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims. She's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn.
You didn't think I was just gonna not talk about this, did you? Rick Flag sounds like he's literally reading off a bullet-pointed cue card. He gives information that doesn't make sense in universe and delivers it in language that a normal person might never do. But this still leaves us with our main topic, natural or naturalistic dialogue. Remember, this is the style of dialogue that sounds like it can be taken directly from real life. But okay, hold on, isn't that just what realistic dialogue is? Well, no. Realistic dialogue is dialogue that sounds like what real people could/would say, but then refined to efficiently serve the purposes of the narrative. You know, all those typical structures and guidelines we addressed before. Even in the realistic argument between Bloodsport and his daughter, there are clear stops and starts.
No, fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you!
Instant retorts and comebacks.
I care that you got caught for stealing something as stupid as a fucking TV watch!
It does other things too!
Man, nobody in your phone can't fucking do it, it's embarrassing!
No, what's fucking embarrassing is having you as my father!
All to capitalize on organically showing information to the audience and moving the plot forward. Realistic dialogue is purposeful, precise, and intentful. Naturalistic dialogue is meandering, messy, and choppy. As Nerdstalgic put it, it captures the error in human communication, all those imperfections that are buffed out in typical dialogue. And it's funny, we as consumers are so used to characters sounding smooth and perma-controlled that imperfection has become a treat. It's the ultimate narrative immersion. It makes the characters feel like they could be having a conversation with us. It brings the heightened language down to our level. Looking back to the Weasel scene, just listen to how many times the characters stutter and pause in just 15 seconds.
Yo, is this a dog?
What?
Is this thing a dog?
A dog?
Yes.
What? What kind of dog do you think it is, mate?
I don't know, I'm not familiar with all the breeds.
Real conversations between real people aren't always smooth or purposeful. Sometimes we say crap that just doesn't make sense, or we say things that don't progress a conversation in any meaningful way. Sometimes we talk for the sake of talking. Sometimes we cut each other off or interrupt each other. One of the best quotes about creative writing is that fiction has to make sense. Reality does not. Fiction is purposeful. Reality is chaotic, and sometimes it's that necessary chaos that can make fiction blurry enough to appear as reality. Listen to a bit of this naturalistic dialogue from Family Guy.
What?
Did not care for The Godfather.
How can you even say that, Dad?
Didn't like it.
Peter, it's so good. It's like the perfect movie.
This is what everyone always says. Whenever they say,
Robert De Niro, Al Pacino. I mean, you never see Robert Duvall.
No, fine actor. Did not like the movie.
At least to me, this is Family Guy at its best. This is insanely well done, down-to-earth dialogue, to the point where I could see it happening in my own living room. It's all the stuttering, the passion, the tangents, and the utter pointlessness of it all that makes it so dang attractive. And Family Guy isn't the only comedy that has well-used naturalistic dialogue. In fact, some comedies have based their entire identities off of dialogue seemingly snatched from real life. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is a masterclass in naturalistic dialogue.
But it sounds like she doesn't want to have sex.
Why aren't you
with
understanding
I
this?
don't. She doesn't know whether she wants to have sex with me. It's that she doesn't know.
That's not the issue.
Are you gonna hurt women?
I'm not gonna hurt these women.
Okay.
Why would I ever hurt these women? I feel like you're not getting this at all.
I'm not getting it.
Another show that has embraced the grimier, chaotic side of dialogue is Rick and Morty, chock full of dialogue interrupted by belching and stutters.
Let's just get over there and deal with this thing. Except your teacher. You're frustrating me.
You were saying that back when we first got arrested. Hey, Rick, what do you know? Look down there.
No, Morty, the only monster here is alcoholism.
These shows have used more naturalistic dialogue to cultivate a tone of realism, which then makes the characters feel more like us, which makes their comedy and their tragedy hit closer to home. But it's not just comedies that make use of naturalistic dialogue. On rare occasions, it's superhero movies. If you want to be really specific, we can take a look to one of the most unique Marvel movies ever made, Taika Waititi's Thor Ragnarok.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard. the rightful heir to the throne and the goddess of death.
Whoever you are, whatever you've done, surrender now, or we will show you no mercy.
Whoever I am, did you listen to a word I said?
Within, the smidgens of naturalistic dialogue aren't based in interruptions or over-talking, but in the characters using dialogue to go on near improv level riffs.
There was one time when we were children, he transformed himself into a snake, and he knows that I love snakes. So I went to pick up the snake to admire it, and he transformed back into himself, and he was like, "Yeah, it's me!" And he stabbed me.
Or to incredulously comment on the nature of the film's own dialogue.
What do I always say? She is the, and it starts with a B.
Trash.
No, not trash. Were you waiting to just call her that? It doesn't start with a B.
Booze hag.
I'm so sorry. No, best. I was thinking about best.
So many times, naturalistic dialogue is used so the characters drop the pretense of acting like they're in a fiction, equipping them to use language more similar to how we might think and react.
No bother. The mortal shall soon. I'm sorry, what did you say his name was?
Coach Ferratu.
Coach Ferratu. That was his real name, like his actual vampire name?
No. His vampire name was Blanc Elistane.
What the f would he name himself after a famous vampire movie? Was he doing a bit?
For Thor Ragnarok, the film's use of naturalistic dialogue, of bringing down heightened language to our level, makes the tone of the film more open, more fun, more exploratory. That tone is the only reason such a stupid and silly scene like Get Help works so well.
Get help! Please! My brother's dying! Get help! Help him! Classic.
Thor Ragnarok sounds and feels different than almost every Marvel film before it. Except for maybe Guardians of the Galaxy, which uses its own moments of naturalistic dialogue.
I would not slice his throat. I would cut his head clean off.
It's a general expression for you killing somebody. You've heard of this. You've seen this, right? You know what that is.
Yeah.
Everyone knows.
No.
Both Thor Ragnarok and Guardians, when compared to other Marvel films, felt a lot more free and fluid and loosey-goosey. And the Suicide Squad manages to hit a similar tone. The film's personality is wild and chaotic and unapologetically fun. Not perfect, but definitely fun. This tone is why we accept flower petals randomly exploding behind Harley, or why we share Nanawe's giddiness at finding completely irrelevant dumb fish friends. John Cena can roll up in tighty-whities, and Polka Dot Man can imagine a 400-foot-tall kaiju Karen, and it's fine. Director James Gunn has been vocal that The Suicide Squad was the most fun he's had making a film, citing that he got to focus on creativity instead of perfectionism. He got to explore these characters in ways that were not only more natural and fun, but more honest to who they were. I mean, just look at the difference between the wooden door Rick Flag from 2016 Suicide Squad versus the more laid-back, charismatic Rick Flag we have now. Even Margot Robbie openly praised the direction Gunn took with Harley. In 2016, Harley was the stable, emotional core of the group, and to be frank, if Harley Quinn is the firm bedrock from which your character group maintains stability, you've probably done something wrong. Margot Robbie has said that Harley is a catalyst of chaos, not a narrative center, and that's why the Harley we see in the Suicide Squad is so erratic and insane.
Recently, I made a promise to myself that the next time I got a boyfriend, I'd be on the lookout for red flags, and if I saw any, I would do the healthy thing. And I would murder him.
But Gunn did not want all fun and games. There were also explorations of deep-seated familial trauma, government manipulation, and acts of selfless servitude. It was a fine line that the Suicide Squad was trying to walk with its tone. It didn't want to be a completely serious, somber look at the reality of metahumans like The Boys or Invincible, but it also did want to be darker and more honest than PG-13 Marvel movies. James Gunn specifically chose Starro as the villain because he was both ridiculous and terrifying, and that's the feel that James Gunn wanted for the film. Ridiculous, terrifying, and serious. I think the Suicide Squad sounds different because we haven't had a film like this occupy this tonal space using this type of dialogue.
No one likes to show off. Unless what they're showing off is dope as fuck.
Naturalistic dialogue and the tone it creates is not new. Movies like Marriage Story and Lady Bird have been doing it for years. And of course, superhero stories aren't new either, realistic or otherwise. But the Suicide Squad's dialogue, its tone, its personality, kind of is new, or at least refreshing. The closest thing I can equate this movie to is a mix of Deadpool and Tropic Thunder, but even that seems like an undersell. The Suicide Squad, though faults it may have, manages to use its dialogue to create this surreal mix of comedy and closeness and tension and tragedy. Peacemaker by himself has more personality than 90% of 2016's cast, and Nanaue is James Gunn's new Groot and steals the show with barely any dialogue. But for the dialogue that is there, much of the time it is natural and raw and flawed, and that is great, because purposeful error is hard to do. There are no guidelines or how to write dialogue like this. That's the whole point. It kind of comes from the bones of a writer, and you either get it right or you don't. Characters come to life through the genuine passion of their creators, and the most authentic life a character can have is one that is naturally imperfect. I cannot teach you guys how to write naturalistic dialogue for your own characters, nor do I think it's the only way to write or the best way to write dialogue. But I can urge you to find that passion for writing, to discover who your characters really are and what you truly want from your fiction. I can speak from experience that writing can turn into a long journey of chasing perfection. But if there's one thing to learn from the Suicide Squad and naturalistic dialogue, it's that imperfection can go a long way too. Anyway, thank you all for watching all the way to the end. If you like what you heard, like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to be a real homie, support on Patreon, check out my other channel, or check out my books on my website, links in the description. As always, it was a pleasure, and I will talk to you all again soon.